The last thing they heard was a voice saying, "It's over." It cut through the radio like shrapnel through glass. Short, sharp, final. Inside Forward Operations Base Kestrel, the air froze. Rain hammered the tin roof like distant gunfire, and red warning lights bled across the control screens. 8 green dots blinked weakly on the tactical map. Naval Recon Detachment Trident, trapped deep inside the Valley of Blackthorn, a place where sound died and men disappeared. Staff Sergeant Mara Calder stood among the noise, headset pressed to her ear. She wasn't part of that op, just a sniper from Task Force Aurora, running Overwatch diagnostics. But when she heard Lieutenant Jonah Reyes say those words, she recognized the tone. It wasn't fear, it was acceptance. Across the room, Major Ellison Park barked into comms. QRF denied, MH-60M Blackhawks grounded, visibility near zero. The terrain was too steep, too wet, too unforgiving. Command had already written Trident off. Mara's eyes locked on the map. 12 kilometers of ridgelines she'd hiked before. She knew every fold of that land. It would take all night, but dawn might still find her there. She stood still for a moment, rain hammering against the roof, static whispering through dead channels. Reyes had once pulled her out of a kill zone in Helmand, dragged her back under fire when no one else would move. She owed him her life. And she didn't believe in debts unpaid. She walked to the weapons rack. The M110A1 she'd used for Overwatch hung there, too light for what waited ahead. She reached for the Barrett MRAD instead, heavier, slower, but it reached farther. Tonight she'd need reach. Comms were down across the valley. No one could issue orders even if they tried. That silence made her choice simple. The storm rolled overhead as her mother's voice echoed in memory. "The forest won't save you, Mara, but if you listen, it'll show you the way." She loaded 5 magazines, slung her ANPRC 148 over her shoulder, and stepped toward the door. Calm. Deliberate, like she'd done this before. The major shouted after her, but she didn't turn. Outside, rain hissed against the floodlights. For a heartbeat, her silhouette stood framed in the glare, small, steady, unshakable, then vanished into the black mouth of the mountains. No one noticed she was gone, until the gate guard radioed in. Calder just cleared the perimeter, alone. If you've made it this far, you're part of the story now. The storm's just starting. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Stay in the fight. Part 2. The Ridge That Eats the Unprepared, coming soon. Don't blink. The mountains didn't welcome her. They judged her right to pass. Rain turned to sleet as Staff Sergeant Mara Calder climbed into the spine of Durand Pass, the only way into the Valley of Blackthorn. The world shrank to breath, stone, and heartbeat. Hours bled together. Every ridge looked the same. Sharp, endless, merciless. She'd been climbing for 14 hours straight, the storm chasing her every step. The air thinned, cold gnawing through her gloves, boots sinking into mud slick as oil. The Barrett MRAD dragged heavy across her chest, the ANPRC 148 silent at her side. No voices, no lights, only the crunch of gravel under her boots and the hiss of rain slipping into sleet. She checked her compass. Still true. 12 kilometers of broken ridgelines lay ahead, and every meter felt earned in blood and breath. Lightning flashed, blue light on black stone. For a heartbeat, she saw herself reflected in a patch of ice. A ghost walking through a world that had stopped caring if she survived. Then came the memories. Her father's calm voice, teaching her how to read wind through trees. Her mother whispering beside a fallen elk, "You honor what you take." Back then, it was hunting. Tonight, it was redemption. At 2,000 meters, she stopped beneath a dead pine, lungs burning, frost clinging to her lashes. She unfolded her map. 2 ridgelines down, maybe 8 kilometers left if the terrain held. If she made it by dawn, she might still find them breathing. Then gunfire, faint, rhythmic, distant, not thunder. Her pulse spiked. She dropped to one knee, raising her optic. Nothing, just fog, rain, and the mountain's slow breath, but instinct screamed, "Move!" She pushed harder, crawling along a knife-edge ridge where wind clawed at her hood and her gloves slipped on frozen rock. She caught herself with the rifle, chest pounding. The storm hissed around her like the world itself breathing down her neck. Then lightning split the sky, and for one fleeting second the valley below came alive. Smoke, muzzle flashes, a flicker of life in the dark. Her jaw clenched. 14 hours behind her. Hell ahead. She chambered around, exhaled slow, and whispered to the storm, "Show me the way." The first shot didn't echo. It vanished, swallowed by rain and distance. Staff Sergeant Mara Calder lay prone on a moss-slick ridge overlooking the Valley of Blackthorn, her Barrett MRAD steady against her shoulder. Below, fog twisted through the cedar canopy. Shadows flickered between bursts of lightning. Somewhere in that chaos, 8 men were still fighting to breathe. Through the scope, movement. An insurgent, RPG-7 slung low, creeping along a fallen log toward the SEAL's last cover. Range, 40 meters downhill. She adjusted 1/2 mil for drop. One breath, one squeeze. The rifle whispered. The man dropped, silent. She rolled and crawled 30 meters left through the wet brush before the enemy could fix her position. Every move was reflex, Aurora's training carved into her muscle memory. Shoot once, move twice, never wait to be found. Below, the firefight raged. Muzzle flashes stuttered from 3 sides, chewing through dirt and bark. The valley was a bowl of death, steep, echoing, unforgiving. Lieutenant Jonah Reyes's team huddled behind a berm, pinned down, almost out of ammunition. She adjusted for wind. 2 knots left, uphill. Found her next target, an MG3 team setting up along the ridge flank. 1 breath in, 1 heartbeat out. The gunner folded backward. The assistant froze, scanning the trees, searching for the ghost that had just ended his world. Mara shifted, firing again. 3 shots, 3 silhouettes falling into the mud. Not to kill them all, to make them believe the forest itself had turned against them. Confusion spread. Panic followed. Then, a flicker. A flash of lightning caught her scope for a split second, throwing a glint into the fog. Down below, a shout. Someone saw something. She cursed under her breath, rolling aside as rounds tore through the leaves where she'd been seconds before. Too close. Her ANPRC-148 crackled to life, static clawing through the storm. "Long shot. Confirm your position. Are you alone?" She keyed the mic. "Affirmative, actual. Ridgeline west. You've got a window. Move now." A pause. Then Reyes's voice, hoarse, alive. "Copy that. Moving." Through her optic, Mara watched the SEALs drag their wounded toward the south ridge as enemy fire broke apart into confusion. Then she saw them. 3 insurgents splitting from the main fight, circling fast toward the team's escape route. She wiped rain from her scope, steadied her breath. Not tonight. The storm swallowed her shot. The first explosion hit like thunder turned solid. Mara Calder flinched as a burst of orange light tore through the fog below her. The ridge trembled, shockwaves rolling through the rock and air. The enemy had regrouped faster than she'd hoped. About 20 fighters, sweeping in from the east, closing fast to cut off Reyes's team before they could reach extraction. She sprinted through the tree line, boots sliding on wet stone, rifle tight against her chest. The ANPRC-148 crackled alive. Raven, this is actual. Pinned down 2 clicks south. They've got belt feds on the high ground. She dove behind a stump slick with rain, raised the MRAD, scanning through drifting smoke. There, an MG3 nest carved into a rock shelf, spitting red arcs across the slope. Range, 420 meters through wind and drizzle, a perfect shot for a machine, a prayer for anyone else. She steadied her breathing, exhaled slow, adjusted for wind, elevation, and the downward angle. 1 shot for them, 1 heartbeat for me. The trigger broke clean. The gunner dropped. The MG3 went silent. But the ridge wasn't done. Tracers hissed through the trees. Rounds cracked past her ear like dry branches snapping. She rolled into cover, mud splattering her visor. The SEALs were dragging wounded uphill, but the next wave was already cresting the ridge, closing fast, ghostly shapes weaving through the fog. Her chest tightened. Last mag. She scanned the slope for anything she could use, and that's when she saw it. An old diesel drum, half buried near an abandoned logging road, relic from a Soviet worksite decades ago. Fumes shimmered over the puddles, raw and volatile. She crawled to it, tore a flare from her vest, and struck it alive beneath her poncho, shielding it from the rain. The magnesium hissed bright and angry, white light reflecting in her eyes. She shoved it under the drum and sprinted for cover. For a breath, the world froze. Rain, wind, then ignition. The fuel caught with a low roar that swelled into something monstrous. Within seconds, fire rolled through the tree line, a wall of heat and sound tearing across the ridge. Figures scattered, screams drowned beneath the roar. Mara hit the ground as the shockwave rolled over her, the forest glowing orange like a sunrise made of war. Through the haze, her radio hissed again. Raven, this is actual. We're at the LZ, bird inbound. Where the hell are you? She looked back toward the valley, flames painting her face in gold and ash. Still on the ridge, she whispered, and it's not over yet. By the time Staff Sergeant Mara Calder came down from the ridge, the storm had spent its fury. Smoke drifted through the pines, curling around scorched trunks and shattered rock. The air was thick with rain, diesel, and the metallic taste of survival. Every step echoed the cost of what it took to keep 8 men alive. Below, an MH-60 Blackhawk hovered over the valley, rotors chopping through the fog like a heartbeat refusing to stop. From the tree line, Mara watched Lieutenant Jonah Reyes and his men load the wounded. 2 body bags, 6 still standing, 8 total. 2 gone, 6 still breathing. She stayed hidden, silent until Reyes paused at the ramp, scanning the ridge where she'd been firing all night. He couldn't see her through the smoke, but he raised one hand, a wordless salute into the mist. Up at Fob Kestrel, Colonel Marcus Varela stood outside the command post, rain soaking his cap as reports came in through broken static. He knew who had gone out there before anyone said a word. He'd seen that look in a soldier's eyes before, the kind that doesn't wait for orders. When Mara finally walked through the perimeter gates hours later, floodlights cut through the rain, painting her uniform in ghost-white glare. Mud and blood streaked across her face. The MRAD hung low at her side. Varela was waiting, Major Ellison Park beside him. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was rain tapping metal and the slow churn of generators. "Did you have authorization for that operation, Sergeant?" "No, sir." The colonel studied her for a beat, then nodded once. "Good, because if you'd waited for permission, they'd all be dead." He turned away, leaving her standing in the rain, the lights reflecting off puddles like dying flares. Days later, a small box appeared on her bunk. Inside, her Silver Star citation, signed and sealed. But it wasn't the medal she kept. It was the black patch Reyes had left for her before exfil. One word stitched in gray thread. Raven. She tucked it into her journal beside a note written in her own hand that night. You don't go into the fire to be seen. You go because someone's still inside. Because sometimes heroism isn't about orders. It's about the moment you refuse to let it be over.